Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to Taste the Blood, the month of the vampire. That's right, we're officially in Halloween month, and October is a big time for horror, and I'll launch my channel officially on October the 12th. And so the first content I brought to the channel was, a live stream. It was a horror live stream, and it was to record and, talk about the Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which, as we can see, I'm a huge fan of. So, what better way to celebrate probably like the first year anniversary of my channel as a content creator than doing another, another version of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and obviously celebrate vampires and Dracula all at the same time, then doing a month dedicated to vampires. And that is what Taste the Blood is all about. And joining me to talk about this other version of Dracula, which basically is a damn classic. It is the first most, the first Dracula version that I seen as a kid, which I got very spooked out by. But to talk about it, I brought on Mr. Daniel Miller of Dan Philemon, aka the Professor.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to Taste the Blood, the month of the vampire.
Yes, thank you for having me, Kevin.
No, it's always a pleasure to have you on board here. So, of course, you've just shown your version of this magnificent film. We
Yeah.
are here to talk about Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi from
Mm,
1931, which for me was, I believe it is probably away from the Nosferatu, the silent, the horror symphony, which was like an unofficial version of Dracula. This for me is the most well known. Universal
mm,
Studios, the Universal horror films. This is the one that kind of launched it all and really put them on the map.
absolutely. Especially with Lugosi's portrayal as Dracula, because he played
Yeah,
the role
mhm,
perfectly in that movie.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, tough shoes to follow, but Gary Oldman to me did a fantastic job as well portraying Dracula.
Mm.
Um, but
Then you
this
had,
one is the one that launched it all.
that's right. Then
Mhm.
after Lugosi, you had, as you say, Gary Oldman. Then you have Christopher Lee in the Hammer era.
Yeah, which are fantastic films as well. That's a
Yeah.
great thing with Dracula. He's such a pulsating character that he brings so much to the table with mystery, horror, the gothic lore, everything. And that's why I thoroughly enjoy the character and thoroughly enjoy um, the whole vampire lore and the Dracula mythos, as you
Yeah.
will. But let's crack on and talk about this version of Dracula. So I might get some things because my pronunciation, as we know, it's crap sometimes. So I might get some things muddled up, but I'm sure Mr. Daniel Miller, the professor, is going to look after me.
I'm right
So,
here.
yes. So here we go. Dracula is a 1931 American per code supernatural horror film directed and co-produced by Todd Browning from a screenplay written by Garrett Fort and starring Bela Lugosi in the title role. It is based on the 1924 staged play Dracula by Hamilton Dean and John L. Balderstone, which in turn is adapted from 1897's novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Lugosi plays Count Dracula, a vampire who emigrates from Transylvania to England and preys upon the blood of living victims, including a young man's fiancée.
Mhm.
Yes. So straight away, Mr. Daniel Miller, the professor. When was the very first time you got to see the first ever masterpiece or retelling of the Bram Stoker film, this version?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was around 11 or 12 when I saw the 1931 original. Because, of course, I found out about it um, after being introduced to one of the Hammer Draculas. Then doing
Hmm.
some research showing that that Hammer wasn't the first one. Before then, it was Universal. Then, of course, before then, there was Nosferatu. But when I found
Hmm.
the Bela Lugosi uh, Dracula, I was like, wow, I can see why this is a classic, and I completely love it for the reasons that it is.
Hmm.
I mean, for 1931, the character Dracula and the genre and setting of Gothic work perfectly. They go hand in hand with one another. Yeah,
Hmm.
and, yeah, and we have the book at home, and this picture of Lugosi against the wall, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same picture on the book cover that I've got. But I have
Oh,
to double
cool.
check that.
Hmm.
But
So
yeah.
I remember seeing this, like yourself, from a very early age. I can't exactly remember the date of the time or how old I was, but I do remember when I first glanced this, um, I was in awe of it because it was more than the the aesthetics of the movie, the black and white, the seeing the castle on the hill,
Mm,
seeing the bats and hearing the noises and the creaking of doors and stuff like that. There was everything else that gave me the chills, and then of course the story itself, you just kind of get sucked into it.
yeah. And one
Um,
interesting thing about this movie, there's not there actually isn't that much music in
no.
there whatsoever, other than the opening credits, the scene at the orchestra, and bells chiming before the uh, the end title. It's a Universal picture. That for me is brilliant. It sets the tone. The moment the music dies down, you just hear nothing but silence. That
Hmm.
sets the tone brilliantly.
Definitely. Definitely. That's what is another thing that makes it so great. It doesn't need music to create the atmosphere of the scene, it's the pure silence
Yeah.
that really amplifies what's happening in the scenes. Like, as you know, music helps tell a story, it helps films along, it helps, with the emotions of the movie. This is
Mhm.
one of them films that, for its time, didn't use music. It used just, like I say, the creaking of a door, a window scene where you could just see fog outside, or you might hear an animal creep across the floor and you could hear it scattering, stuff like that. And then,
Yeah.
of course, the scenes with Dracula himself, where he's just walking down the flight of stairs or
Yeah.
standing at a doorway and he's got his cape covering his eyes and it's just the glow of his eyes. It's things
Yeah.
like that that really made this film stand out. And that's what I loved about it when I was a kid and also creeped me out as a kid.
Mm.
Hmm.
I also like Lugosi's accent whenever he spoke as Dracula, especially the first
Yes.
time we see him when Renfield enters the ruins of the castle. He just introduces himself. I am Dracula, and that
Hmm.
accent, in that, and also the way he delivers it, that also is just as chilling, if not more so, than the silence and the setting of the film itself.
Hmm. And it's amazing how this film, unlike the Bram Stoker Dracula version, the the one by Francis Ford Coppola, this actually explores Renfield more,
Yeah,
where the other one kind of skips and alludes to him. And then you basically see him locked up insane, eating bugs and spiders. in them very graphic scenes in the 1992 version, I think it was.
That's right,
Uh,
1992.
but this one, you actually see his journey and his arc,
That's right.
which I thought really fascinating. So, would you like to begin and start off?
Well, yes, I would. Thank you very much. Yeah. So yeah, after the opening credits, which an interesting choice of music is Swan Lake in there,
Mm-hmm.
which if you just listen to the music, it's a beautiful, but it's also a somewhat doomed piece. Like there's this
Yeah,
forebodingness in there, and that I think is perfectly fitting for Dracula. Not just the
definitely.
story, but also Dracula's character as well. So yeah, we begin in the mountains in Transylvania, and we're introduced to Renfield and a few other travelers in the coach. One of them is reading from a book and is knocked over during the travel, and the other one warns the others to get inside before sundown because the Nosferatu is waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So they reach the small village, and already you can tell that there's superstition and more than just superstition at play. There's also fear of the locals
Mm-hmm.
within this village. And Renfield says, "Oh, don't get rid of my luggage. I'm moving on to Castle Dracula." And everyone's like, "You
Yeah,
mustn't go there." I mean,
yeah,
although he's not afraid, but he has no idea because the locals know. They
yeah.
know what
Well, they
the
even mentioned, don't they? They mentioned the Dracula and his brides. They can turn into bats and wolves,
yes.
and he mentions all that. But he says, "Oh, we're heading." He wants to go to this pass, the pass where he's going to be collected and taken to Dracula's castle. And obviously, they say, "Oh, just stay the night, yeah." And then when he mentions, "No, I need to go on, and I need to reach this pass," and originally they're like, "Oh well, why do you want to go to this pass?" He's like, "Well, because I'm going to Castle Dracula." He's like, "Dracula? You're going to Castle Dracula? You mustn't go there."
Oh
He goes,
no.
"Dracula and his brides, they turn to bats and wolves. It's danger there." And then you have the lady with the cross
Yeah,
who's like, "Take this with you, my son," and stuff like that. And just very powerful opening scenes.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So well, so once they get to the path, I believe this is where he gets collected by the coach.
Oh, the coach. I especially love how the camera just focuses on the coach driver's face, and you just have those small lights lighting up the shadows
Mm-hmm.
under his eyes, and there's not a single. He doesn't say a single word. It's all just gestures,
Mm-hmm.
which is perfectly creepy.
Mm-hmm. Like a creepy madman.
Yeah. It says go
Yeah.
to Castle Dracula.
Yes. Yes. That's all you get is the glare of the eyes.
Yeah.
And this is Castle Dracula,
There it
which
is in
is,
all of its gothic glory.
yes, in a beautiful version as well. A beautiful
Yeah.
artwork as well when it came to Castle Dracula.
Mm.
Hmm. So after he arrives, he meets obviously Count Dracula, and the scenes between them, you can tell that there's like an atmosphere right
Yeah.
off the bat. So, would you like to continue? Oh,
Yeah, and I don't mind continuing.
yeah.
Okay. So Dracula welcomes Renfield into the outer ruins of the castle, and then welcomes him into the inner sanctum. And it's here that we have a bit more of an idea as to why Renfield has gone to Dracula's castle to sign documents for an estate that he's purchased in England.
Hmm.
So he's like, okay, so already here, the seed for how Dracula's horror comes into play is set because he's moving from one place that he's victimized, looking for new grounds, fresh blood, as it were. During the transaction, Renfield cuts himself on a paperclip from a document,
Yes.
Dracula sees the blood and he's like, "Yum."
Yeah. Them scenes alone are really, really interesting
Yeah,
because I love how you seen Bela Lugosi playing Dracula and how his eyes just light up
yeah,
when he sees the blood, and it's like it's a snack.
yeah, yeah. I also especially love how they're listening out to the walls, and Dracula is just completely, I don't know, at ease with this, and he's like, "Children of the night,
Hmm.
what music they make."
Oh yeah, one of the classic lines from that one, which also made it into the 1992 version,
Yes, yes, that,
which
yeah,
just beautiful scenes, beautiful, like some of the dialogue in this I find fascinating.
mm,
Uh, and in both him and Gary Oldman's performances are just brilliant. But it all came from Bela Lugosi's performance, and you can actually see when Gary Oldman how he's trying to emulate a lot of what Bela Lugosi did, even the accent,
yeah,
which also is like a huge tribute to this film, the
it
original
does.
version.
Oh, it does. Yeah, Gary
Definitely,
Oldman, he was a really good Dracula.
he really was. One, like I say, one of my favourite films. We covered it last year, like I say, in a live stream, which I can put in the link down below for this one as well. But obviously, you know, he goes to the castle. He has these meetings with Dracula. Uh, what I also found with Renfield, how he's like, because he's basically like Jonathan Harker in
Mm,
these scenes. Like obviously, the thing with the 1992 version, they focus more on Jonathan Harker and Mina, where this one they give Renfield like a true story arc,
yeah,
which makes it 100% stand out from the 1992 version. After he's been charmed by Dracula and he's arrived, and you know, he then gets the lease, and it's for Carfax Abbey in England.
that's right. Carfax Abbey.
Carfax Abbey in England, when which he has the intention which to travel to the very next day.
Yeah,
But when Jonathan Ark approaches and he goes, "Oh, well, for you to travel there, I hope I brought you enough, slips for your
yeah. Enough
furniture." He goes,
labels.
"Yes," and he goes, "I'm only taking 3 boxes with me."
Yeah, and the pause before he said boxes.
Hmm.
I'm only
Brilliant.
taking 3 boxes.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Mm,
Um, then Renfield, when he enters, after he's agreed and all the information's been signed on, Dracula decides to hypnotize Renfield.
that's right.
So he hypnotizes it into opening the window, and Renfield faints as a bat appears. And this scene for me is one of the best scenes in the entire movie. After Renfield faints and after he allows the bats in, uh, who walks in? None other than the braids of Dracula.
Yeah. And also the way they creep is just eerie. As in, there's not
Ah,
even a sound their feet make on the
mhm.
floor.
It's the whole panned out scene as well for me in this particular scene, where in black and white, I know there is a coloured version, I believe, of this, but I just wouldn't want to watch the coloured version. I think I'd rather only ever watch this in black and white because
Mm,
it's so effective better in black and white.
yeah.
Like the panned out shots with the braids approaching Renfield as he's collapsed on the floor. And obviously now you have Dracula walking and there's that fog behind him.
Yes.
Through the gaze of the windowsill and the doors opened. It's just a beautiful, awesome scene.
Yeah. And with just a
Just
gesture of a hand, he moves the brides back away from
Mhm.
Renfield as he uh, turns him by himself.
Yes, which is amazing, amazing, just amazing.
Yeah,
So after that, I believe once the waves have closed in and he's now converted, I guess, Renfield to be his new servant within the UK, heading to England. He
yeah,
board is it the Vesta? It's not called I don't know why, but they didn't call it the Demeter in this film.
yeah. I was
The
going to
ship.
ask, it was originally called the Demeter in the novel, wasn't it?
It was called the Demeter, and there's an entire chapter called the Captain's Log.
Mm.
And it's very sad to me that they didn't really focus much on this. They did a better job focusing on this in the Francis Ford Coppola 1992 version, where you got to see the chaos on board the Demeter, and you also had the shape shifting of Gary Oldman's Dracula in that bat form, and you got
Yeah,
to see images of him in his coffin, in the soil, in the big crate, kind of mutating his body and then going rampant on the ship. And then, of course, because it is such a huge important part and the horror part of the book, they did an actual separate movie last year called The Last Voyage of the Demeter,
yes.
which I have had the pleasure of seeing. Unfortunately, because the UK is a pile of shite, it still hasn't had a distribution deal. It still isn't even available on DVD, Blu-ray. It's like it's been totally left to the wayside. I don't know what the
Mm.
issues are with it not getting to the UK, but it's very frustrating. I had to go up to my brother's to watch it as he has the means to watch it. And we actually watched it via VPN and we'll watch it on Amazon Prime, but the US version of Amazon Prime, because it's
Mm.
available on Blu-ray, it's available on DVD, and it's available on streaming in the good
Yeah,
old US of A. But unfortunately, the UK, which I believe it would have done wonders here,
yeah.
it seemed to have escaped the market because the distribution company that had the rights to the last voyage of the Demeter, I don't know if they went bankrupt or there was some sort of discrepancy, but they lost a lot of films that they had on their slate to distribute across the UK cinemas. And for
Yeah.
whatever reason, that didn't make its way to UK theatres. It hasn't even made its way to streaming or been released on Blu-ray or any physical media. And it's just a shame because I
Mm.
do believe it's not on the level of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's not, you know, it's not going to live up to this version, the 1931 version of Dracula. It's not going to live up to the 1992 version of Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one. But it's a great companion piece.
Mm.
You have two separate films, one that just has an inkling of what goes on the Demeter, which is this one, the 1931 version, which is called the Vesta for whatever reason that they had to alter the name. Then obviously you did see a little bit of it in the 1992 film, but then you've now got a whole film dedicated to that one chapter of the book, which for me it's a very fearful and a very fun gothic horror film that
Yeah.
really deserves to be seen.
I guess it's another import then.
Another import, yes, Mr. Daniel Miller, you better get your horse on it.
Yeah.
And you better buy yourself The Last Voyage of the Demeter, because it's another review I would definitely love to do on this channel.
Mm.
So, what happens next after me little rant? I'll let you take over.
Yeah. Okay. So the Vesta arrives at port at Whitby, and the authorities find the crew in various states of mutilation, with the captain tied to the mast. Then they hear Renfield chuckling below deck after he's secured Dracula in his casket after the carnage on the ship.
Mhm.
They open up they open up the hatch down to the cargo hold, and they see Renfield just gazing up at the bottom of the stairs, and he's gone completely mad. He's lost his mind at this point, and just as the story of the Vesta gets into the newspapers, he has been institutionalized at, I believe it's Wayward's, Wayward's, no, Seward. That was the character's name, Seward Sanitarium.
Mm-hmm.
And as this has happened, Dracula is now moved in. He's hiding among the commuters of London, you know, top hat and trench coat and
Which
whatnot,
them
walking
scenes
through.
is, yes, and them scenes themselves are amazing. The
Yeah,
iconic, him all in the traditional Victorian way, and
yeah,
he's walking down the street, and
in the fog.
he's got his top hat and tail and his cane in the fog, and just the gaze of him just walking around the streets of London, fantastic. And of course, you know, Gary Oldman's Dracula emulated it magnificently in his film, but none of what he did would have not been possible without Bela Lugosi's performance and what he delivered to the character.
That's true.
And since you've mentioned it, here is Mr. Renfield, who's completely off his bonkers. He's totally
Yeah.
crazy. He's now locked up. And, as we know, Dracula has now entered London outside of Whitby.
Hmm.
And this is Mr. Jonathan Harker,
Yeah.
I believe, who we will then be introduced to soon. And this is the lovely Mina.
Mm.
He has another shot of her being seduced by Mr. Dracula himself. Who, she's a very beautiful actress, this actress as well.
Yes, she is. And I believe, according to the credits, played by Helen Chandler.
Helen Chandler, yes. So, what happens next, Mr. Daniel Miller, the professor?
Right. So we learn when with Renfield being incarcerated, he's had a taste for insects, like he's
Hmm.
eating flies and eating spiders, and no one at the institution knows why he has this need to kill these smaller animals to sustain his own life. Meanwhile, Dracula has crossed paths with Saywood and Jonathan Harker, Mina
Hmm.
and Lucy at the
Hmm.
theatre, and
Hmm.
he's formally introduced himself, saying that he's bought the estate next door. It reminds me of the broken battlements of my castle in Transylvania.
Hmm.
Yeah, when he's trying to entertain, or not entertain, but basically wooing Lucy in conversation while Harker and Mina remain watching the show.
Mm. Yeah, and I also noticed when it comes to Renfield, after obviously being introduced to Dracula, Dracula later that night he enters Lucy's room and he
Yes.
feeds on her. And I love the scene with the bat at the
Yeah.
window. That's what you get in 1931, but just imagine being in 1931 and seeing this in a
Yeah.
theatre, in a pitch black theatre. Hopefully you might have been intimidated by that.
Oh yeah.
But he enters into Lucy's room and he feeds on her.
Yes. As a result, she dies, a victim of
Yes,
vampirism.
yes. And then you also get another scene with Mr. Renfield,
Yes, that's
which I
true.
think's very important, where he moans and like complains and he wants to be set free because he's worried because if his cries he believes could be affecting Mina's dreams.
That's true. Because now Dracula has his eyes set on Mina.
Hmm.
And Renfield, as well as being the servant, he's the link between Dracula's hiding place and Seward's estate, which is right next to the sanitarium.
Yes, definitely. Which was really like that's what was fun about this is seeing because this is more a Renfield story alongside Dracula's story, where yes, we have Mina, but and they do the story with what happens where he eventually lures and is able to seduce Mina and bite her, and you also have the great Van Helsing who figures everything out at the same time, which I have to admit, in this version, the 1931 version, I preferred Van Helsing to. I love Anthony Hopkins, but he was more like a crazy scientist type,
Yeah.
where in this one, Van Helsing comes across very more serious,
Hmm.
and he knows about the vampire law, and he talks about Wolfbane
Yeah,
a
that's
lot.
true.
So obviously in this, obviously Mean after Lucy's death, he then sets his sights on Mina, and she starts acting strangely. And Professor Van Helsing notices the marks on her neck,
Yeah.
and I believe there's also a scene after things start happening with Mina that Dr. Van Helsing and is talking to Jonathan Harker, and Dracula comes into the house and they begin talking.
That's right.
And straight away, Professor Van Helsing suspects Dracula. Starts asking him questions, trying to get a figure on who he is when he has a mirror in his hand. And
Yes, when he opens up the
instantly,
cigarette box and he
yes.
notices that Dracula doesn't cast a reflection when he's talking to Mina.
Mhm. Yes, and then he has a mirror, and instantly Dracula knocks the mirror out of his hands. And
Mm,
instead of going back through the front door, he heads to the window.
that's right.
And next thing you know, he disappears. And when Jonathan Hawker goes and looks out the window, he goes, "Look, there's this large dog running in the distance." And the knew straight away it is, of course, Dracula has transformed into this wild dog to escape being caught and to be able to quickly run through the streets of London.
Yes. Back to his hiding place.
Yes. So I'll allow you to continue, Mr. Daniel Miller.
Okay. So after they discover that Dracula doesn't cast a reflection in the mirror, Van Helsing recommends to Seward and Harker to take wolfsbane and put it around the doors and the windows, particularly around Mina's room, and they give explicit instructions to the maids that whatever happens, make sure that she doesn't remove the wreath even in her sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she removes it, and
Mm-hmm.
Dracula hypnotizes one of the maids to allow Mina uh, to allow access to Mina in her room.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Renfield is still gone crazy again and still manages to escape his room. That's when
Yes.
he's that's when they suspect him to be a conduit Dracula is using to get to Mina, which is when Renfield goes on. What I have to say is the moment that actually had me a little bit scared the first time I watched this was when Renfield was talking to Harker, to Stewart and Van Helsing. He said,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't say what he promises, he shows.
Yes.
Rats,
Yes.
rats, thousands, millions of them. And, and the first time I saw that, I was like, good God, for 1931, this is actually creepy. This is
Yeah. Creepy
terrifying.
and amazing acting.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
if you think about the actor who plays Renfield, he plays it very straight right at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
So he's basically playing a straight, normal man who's there on business to do the job. Then as the film progresses and he's now being coerced by Dracula, he turns into this lunatic. And it's fantastic how that actor was able to jump from one style and to act a certain way and portray this character who you slowly see becoming more and more undone. And it's
Yeah,
done in such a beautiful, amazing, realistic way.
that is true.
Mhm. So this is after Mina is, now once again fully, I guess, under the control of Dracula.
Yes. And afterwards, she tries to seduce Jonathan Harker.
Hmm.
Van Helsing and Seward notice this, and Van Helsing is quick to rush in there with the crucifix. She has an adverse reaction to it, almost petrified of it. Harker's like, "What the hell are you doing? Isn't she scared enough?" That's when they learn that Dracula has actually visited her. But
Hmm.
just before this, there is another scene where Dracula appears before Van Helsing in the house. And
Yes,
this is one of my favorite lines from Van Helsing. "We'll tear that place down stone by stone, excavated a mile around. I'll dig out your
yes.
earthmarks and drive that stake through your heart." I love
Yes,
that line.
absolutely. There's a line, I forgot it. I was just watching this before. The line, when he knocks the mirror out of his hand
Yes.
and Dracula walks to the windowsill to like transform and turn into the wild dog. And he says something to Van Helsing. He says this scene. He goes for one lifetime. You are a very wise man. He says something along those lines,
Yeah.
and that for me is one of my favorite lines in the movie. I
Mm,
cannot remember word for word verbatim, but he says something. Van Helsing, for having lived only one life, you are a very wise man. He says something like that. Next thing he disappears, and then he's off into the darkness.
yeah.
Yes. So this is we're getting closer and closer to the final. Yeah. So obviously Mina, as you said, is now in complete control. She tries to seduce Jonathan Harker. And this is where, with Dracula as well. Dracula, he's had that conversation with Van Helsing right at the beginning. Uh, Jonathan Harker goes to the terrace and is talking to Mina. Mina is then acting very strange, out of character. She tries
Yeah.
to seduce him, and she tries to, she's saying how much she loves the night. She loves the darkness. She loves fog now, where she was always scared of the dark.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's a bat flying above,
Yeah.
who, as we know, is Mr. Dracula,
Yeah.
Count Dracula. And, it squeaks to Mina, and then she suddenly attacks Jonathan Harker.
Hmm. Quickly saved by
Um,
Van Helsing with the crucifix.
yes, yes. And Van Helsing, yes, he comes in with the crucifix. Um, and then after that, you have Van Helsing and you have Seward in the save him. Mina confesses what Dracula uh, has done to her. He admits that he's been seducing her. He's been in her head. She's been having dreams. She's just got the urge to be with him. Deep down, I think she knows it's not right, but she just cannot resist this urge that's come over her.
Yeah.
And, after that happens, Dracula then hypnotizes the character of Briggs.
Hmm.
And Briggs, and he removes the wolf brain from Mina's room because they're trying to protect her. Oh, sorry, from her neck. It's around her neck. So because obviously Van Helsing has put the wolf brain like a necklace around her neck,
Yeah.
and he hypnotizes Briggs to remove the necklace from around of wolf brain around her neck. Which after that happens, she opens a window. Van Helsing and Harker sees Renfield heading for Carfax Abbey. Arriving there, they see Dracula with Mina. I think he's carrying her at this point.
I think that
I do
she's
think he's.
hypnotized to walk, and then, if I remember correctly, no, she might be carried, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think she gets carried in after, she carries her, arrives and with Mina. When Harker shouts to Mina, Dracula thinks Renfield has betrayed him by
Mm-hmm.
leading them, but he hasn't actually betrayed him. They've actually noticed him walking and they
Yeah.
basically followed him there. He didn't do it deliberately, but obviously because of this, obviously Mr. Dracula is not very happy.
No.
So what happens next? I'll let you finish this thing off.
Okay. Dracula takes Renfield by the neck, effectively either choking him to death or breaking his neck. His body
Hmm.
tumbles down the stairwell and he just falls dead. Dracula then takes Mina down into the crypt of the ruins, where Van Helsing and Harker are quickly following him just as the door closes. They manage to break the door in after hearing Mina scream, and they find two caskets.
Hmm.
One of them has Dracula inside, resting on a bed of his own earth in Transylvania.
Yes.
Yeah, because this is the rule. This is how they explain Dracula can get from Transylvania and England and reside in England. The vampire needs a casket of his own native soil in which to rest in.
Hmm.
So they find Dracula in one casket, but the other casket is empty. So Harker has hope that Mina is still alive. And this is what I like about the Van Helsing in this movie.
Yeah.
He literally tears off the lid on Dracula's casket, tears off a stake of wood from the lid, and asks Harker to find him a stone or something sharp to bash it in with. And he does so. He bashes in the stake through Dracula's heart, ultimately putting an end to the Prince of Darkness. Mina snaps out of Dracula's control now. Harker finds her, and the two are reunited, and they walk off into the sunrise.
Yes. Ending a classic. Ending what became the first of the Universal monster movies and
Hmm.
really set the bar very high for what was to come next. Which,
Absolutely.
all I can say is I do enjoy this movie. I think it's a classic. It's great to watch on a stormy night with all the lights off, with a cup of tea, with a thunderstorm outside.
Yeah.
It, this black and white classic on the television screen. I think it's a perfect viewing, especially if that happens over Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Um, there are things I love about this, but there's things I love more about the 1992 version. The thing I like about this that's a positive, I prefer the Van Helsing in this.
Yeah.
I
So did
prefer how
I.
he's more straight. He's like he's basically very serious, straight to the point.
Mm.
With a mission, and he knows the mission. I love the fact that they focused a lot on Renfield more, where in the 1992 version, I enjoy Renfield, but he's just seen as like this crazy fool, where you actually see the downfall of Renfield in this, from the man he was to what he become.
Yeah.
Jonathan Hawker doesn't really play a strong part in this compared to the first one. Apart from the 1992 version.
Hmm.
Um, Mina's role, I think, slightly reduced more. I was kind of disappointed you didn't really see much of what happened to Lucy in this one, because the scenes with Lucy in the 1992 version are terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Especially that scene where she's coming down the stairs to her crypt with the child in her hands.
Mm.
You know,
They're also terrifying in the Hammer version as well.
yes, yes, absolutely. So obviously, though the Hammer version's fun as well, but
Mm.
obviously none of that would have happened without this one.
That's true.
So, what's your overall thought of this one, Daniel Miller?
Overall thoughts. This is without a doubt a horror classic. A must watch. uh, for not just for horror but for cinema in general. It's got everything. It's of course got the monster, which is a vampire. It has the gothic setting nailed to a T, and it has a protagonist in the form of Van Helsing who is very strong, very knowledgeable. Yes, and of course Bela Lugosi is iconic in the role of Dracula.
Mhm.
And Renfield, again, he is also a strong character too. As you say, it's great to see him basically crumble from your average man who's very confident, very assured of himself. But then after that encounter with Dracula, we see him very quickly decline into insanity.
And it's just beautifully acted.
Yeah, beautifully framed and shot as well.
Yes, absolutely amazing movie.
Yeah, and the very minimal use of music greatly benefits the film as well.
And the best thing about Bela Lugosi, about
Hmm.
this for me, as you know, Boris Karloff, another legendary actor of the Universal Monster franchise,
Yeah,
he went out there and he did a number of Frankenstein movies. The thing with Bela Lugosi, he only played Dracula for the Universal Monsters once.
yeah.
He didn't reprise this role in other films up to, again. The only time he did was with the Abbott and Costello uh, film, which I believe was Abbott and Costello meets the Wolfman or meets Frankenstein.
It was
It
meets
was,
Frankenstein.
yeah, where, they are working at some sort of like post office near the railway station, and they've got Dracula, they've got Frankenstein. That's the only other time that you're seeing Bela Lugosi return as Dracula, but it was
Yeah.
more for comedic purposes.
Hmm.
Where
Even though
this
it
one,
was, yeah. Wait,
mhm,
sorry. Although it was a departure from the tried and true horror of the original Dracula, seeing Lugosi for the final time in Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, it felt like the perfect way to send off the first of the Universal monsters by having the actor who brought him to life
mhm,
ultimately play him for one last time
yeah,
before he would eventually be retired until Hammer bought the rights and then revived Dracula with Christopher Lee in.
yes. And Christopher Lee was in about 5 or 6 sequels, and
Yeah.
each one was, for me, was good. You have the Dracula, then I think my favourite is the Prince of Darkness.
Oh yeah. Now
Prince
he
of
never says a
Darkness,
single line of dialogue in Dracula Prince of Darkness.
yes.
Not
And then this,
once.
yeah, then this Taste the Blood of Dracula.
Yep. Dracula has risen from the grave.
Yes, there's just, I
Dracula
mean,
Symbol 2.
absolutely. He did an amazing job, and he made him an iconic character as well. If people
Yeah,
didn't know the Bela Lugosi one, people will probably often refer to the Christopher Lee version. And then, of course, when you think of Bram Stoker's Dracula, if you don't think of the 1931 version, you of course think of the 1992 version,
that's right.
which was played beautifully again. Once we've mentioned a few times, Gary Oldman, one of my all-time favorite movies. But any last thought on uh, Bela Lugosi's Dracula?
My final thoughts. I'd say my final thoughts would be with this. In comparison to, no, no, not a choice of words, but Dracula and Nosferatu, they're both based upon the same novel. The 1931 movie, of course, I wouldn't say, don't know if you say it's a closer, more faithful adaptation to Stoker's novel, but Nosferatu also had some great strengths in that one,
Mhm.
and not just as a horror movie, but as a Dracula movie, even if it
Yes,
was an unofficial adaptation.
yes.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the upcoming Nosferatu remake that's due out in December this year? I cannot wait. And I genuinely believe, just like how Francis Ford Coppola created his version of Dracula for a new generation, he kept
Mhm.
to the formula, but he kind of focused it more on a love story and went deeper into the lore of Vlad the Impaler and
Yeah.
incorporated that in with the Dracula story. Got high hopes for the brand new Nosferatu.
Mm. I haven't heard much about the Nosferatu, although I have seen some of the teaser posters for it, and I have to say it looks interesting enough. Like it's got the gothic aesthetic.
Mm.
Well, you can see the outline in one of them. There's the outline of the vampire in shadow and the glowing eyes, which looks brilliant. And I'm hoping that if it's going to be paying quite a lot of homage to the 1922 version, at
I think
least
it
the look
is.
of the vampire,
I think
then
it will
yeah,
do.
great.
Yeah, and it's if you're not seen the trailer for it yet,
No, not yet.
oh well. After this, I suggest you get online, go to YouTube, and check out the Nosferatu trailer because the
Oh,
style that Robert Eggers. If you do you like his work, I love his work. I love his style. I love love his camera work. I love how he creates a film. He is a very no genre director who has his own unique style. It's unique to him. The Lighthouse was magnificent. The Northman was magnificent. The
mm,
Witch was magnificent. And the cast of the new Nosferatu is outstanding. And the trailer really, really homes in to the feel and the tone of what Nosferatu should be.
yeah.
And for me, I think this is going to be like for me, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one, was my Dracula, my vampire film of my era. It was the one
Mm,
that I loved growing up. I always return to the 1931 one, but I've always had this fascination with Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 1992 Francis Ford Coppola one. And I generally believe Nosferatu is going to do that for a new generation of fans, especially of vampires.
yeah.
But yes, looking forward to that. If you had to rate the 1931 Dracula, how would you rate it?
Uh, I'd give it a very. I'd actually give it a full house, a 5 out of 5.
Hmm.
This is of course a classic. Not now. Everyone's going to say, "Oh yeah, classics are going to have flaws." I'm not going to deny. Even the best movies ever made have flaws. Dracula is no exception. But then again, it's great all around. Great casting, great photography, great aesthetics in the design, in the production design, and overall just fantastic storytelling based upon
Hmm.
Stoker's novel. And I think that this one is probably a very good adaptation,
Mm.
along with Hammer's attempts at Dracula, with Francis Ford Coppola's attempts of Dracula in 1992 as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
5 out of 5. Bela Lugosi, definitely the uh, the 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 forerunner of Dracula actors, excluding
Hmm.
Nosferatu.
And without this being the success it was, we might not have got Universal Monsters.
That's true.
So this was the Godfather, this was the cornerstone of those movies in that franchise. Now I really enjoy this. My final thoughts on this is it's the eeriness of the silence for me. And like I said, the
Yeah.
creaking of doors, the fog, the hearing of critters running around the floor, just a stare from his eyes that really just home you in. And it's the fact it's as close to a silent movie as you can get without the music.
Mm.
Um, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I thoroughly liked how it made it feel when I was a kid, like chilled to the bone. Obviously, as I've got older, I do still appreciate it. But that what elements in this, like you said, people can complain about its flaws. I do wish they had, focused on some elements more, like talk more about the history of Mina and Lucy, like they did in the 1992 one. But they learn, obviously, for that, they had to basically learn to walk before they could run.
Yeah,
And so this one was like the one that set the tone for them. And then the 1992 version fully just ran with it and really went to a different level with it.
that's true.
But it's still a classic. I'm probably very much like you. I would give Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola one, a 5 out of 5. This one, I still love it, but I would just give this 4 out of 5. I would drop it just one, but I still love it for what it is.
Hmm.
I really, really do. And so, yes, thank you for doing this with me again, Mr. Daniel Millier. It's been a pleasure reviewing the original Dracula from 1933. There's so much more I could say, but we'll be here for 4 hours.
Yeah. Again, it's been great talking about with you. Thank you for having me on the channel. It's a pleasure
Yeah,
doing this.
you are always welcome on the entertainment headquarters, and you'll be coming back throughout the month of October because
Mhm.
there is lots to come on the entertainment headquarters with Taste the Blood, the month of the vampire. So let me just give people a little taste of what is coming up for the rest of the month of October for Taste the Blood, the month of the vampire.
Mm.
So obviously this is a nice little surprise for everybody because I didn't actually schedule this, but I thought, you know what? If you're going to do a month about vampires, you need to do a Dracula film.
Oh yeah.
So why not go right back to the beginning? And we've done the 1931 classic. Then coming to the entertainment headquarters on October the 11th, we have Taste the Blood Part 1 Vampire Special, where we will be talking about Nosferatu, Salem's Lot, and Shadow of the Vampire.
Whoa.
Amazing movies. Then
Mm.
October the 18th, we have the Subspecies discussion. Subspecies by Full Moon. It's an underrated classic vampire series starring, the vampire Radu. For me, should be a vampire and a horror icon all rolled into one. Have you ever seen those films, Daniel?
Salem's Lot, Nosferatu, both the 1922 silent version and the German remake from 1979 I have. The German remake, I thought was fantastic. Not
Hmm.
especially with how far technology had come, and also with just the directing choices in that movie, from
Hmm.
the look of the vampire to the scene where it's just the choir singing and the whole town has gone into chaos. Like everyone's losing their minds with the disease and the rats running around the place. You just have
Hmm.
this melancholic choir chanting, and then
Yes.
you just follow Lucy through the town. But yeah,
Mm,
that's great acting, great cinematography. Love it all around.
yes.
Salem's Lot, the original, I love Salem's Lot.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Mm.
Me too. Very much love it. It's a great Stephen King classic. One of my absolute favourites of Stephen King. Have you seen any of the subspecies films?
Can't say I have, no.
Well, you're missing a treat.
Oh,
You really need, if you can find them, if you've got a UPN, you can put on your UPN and you can watch it on Tubi in the good old US of A. They have one, two, three, and five of the subspecies genre on there, and four, I believe, is potentially on Amazon Prime. But Radu the vampire in there, he's a mixture of Dracula and Nosferatu. He's fantastic. You would love him. So I'm looking forward to that. So that comes on October the 18th, the subspecies discussion. Then in October the 25th, we will be doing a retro classic movie show special on the Lost Boys,
oh, the
which,
Lost
as you
Boy.
know, from 1987, what can you say? One of the best vampire films of all time. And
That's true.
finally, on October the 26th. Yes, October the 26th. We have coming to the channel the final of the Taste the Blood um, uh, specials, and we will be doing Dusk Till Dawn, John Carpenter's Vampires, Queen of the Damned, and 30 Days of Night. Four very modern, known, popular vampire films among vampire fans. And then coming on Halloween night, I will be bringing in doing a blog for all who know the channel, because I will be visiting Romania. And while in Romania, I'm going to be doing a very special blog about Bram Castle, which is the place that inspired Bram Stoker to create the book of Dracula. I'm going to be going around the castle, taking it all aside, and learning more about Vlad the Impaler, who was the inspiration behind the Dracula character.
Wow.
So lots to come to the entertainment headquarters. What's coming to Daniel Miller and Dan Filliman?
Now this Halloween, I have something special in mind because I've got 2 teasers at the moment for the Horror Stories, which is a collection of short stories I'm currently working on, designed to scare, chill, and really make you think twice about a few things. Trying not to be vague, but it's definitely worth the wait. I'm going to be working hard on it, and when it arrives, prepare yourself.
Oh, I'm really looking forward. I know you're a very creative person, Daniel. You've got a very strong, magnificent imagination, and I know you work hard on your ideas, and I look forward to listening to your stories when they finally go on the channel on Dan Filman. Please like, share, and subscribe to this amazing person, and check out his stop motion Godzilla versus Varan shorts that he did dedicated to the kaiju genre. Another passion of yours.
Yeah.
Uh, Looking forward to more of those if they do happen, but most importantly, looking forward to what you come up with creatively with your creative stories. And I know you've got a hell of a mind for them, so I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Mm.
Hmm,
Or
yes.
we'll have to wait until then.
Well, absolutely, but it's been a pleasure doing this with you, Daniel. And like I say to everybody out watching, please stay tuned to the entertainment headquarters for more Taste the Blood, the month of the vampire. But from me and from Daniel, we'll catch us all at the next one, and don't get too scared.